The anti-gravity seating of the orbital stadium hummed beneath the feet of 37 species as the Galactic Olympic Committee prepared its announcement. Captain Ryan Blake adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, the only human among the sea of chitin, bioluminescence, and floating appendages. The air smelled of ionized metal and something vaguely citrus, Zephyrian pheromones, if he remembered the briefing correctly. High Arbiter Vexlor ascended the central podium, his segmented exoskeleton catching the stadium lights in a way that made his carapace gleam like polished obsidian. 4 of his 6 arms raised for silence, while the other 2 manipulated a holographic display that projected the Federation's emblem, a twisting helix of alien script. "Delegates," Vexler intoned, his voice a resonant buzz that echoed through the stadium's acoustics. "The Galactic Olympic Committee has reached its decision regarding the petition for human inclusion in this cycle's events." Blake clenched his jaw but kept his expression neutral. Head spent 3 months arguing with bureaucrats, presenting physiological data, even submitting recordings of Earth's own Olympic records. None of it had mattered. A Vorak athlete, Krillix the Unbroken, if Blake recalled correctly, leaned over from the neighboring delegation, his mandibles clicking in a way that sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Softkin," he rumbled, the word vibrating through Blake's ribs. "You should leave now. Save yourself the embarrassment." Blake ignored him. Vexlor continued. "After extensive review of human biological limitations, lack of natural armor, inferior muscle density, and absence of specialized evolutionary traits, the committee has determined that human participation poses an unacceptable risk to both competitors and the integrity of the games." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Blake saw the luminary delegation's bioluminescent patterns flicker in amusement, their skin shifting through shades of cyan and violet. A telepathic cerulean floated nearby, its orb, like eyes pulsing with what could only be pity. "The decision is unanimous." Vexlor finished. "Humanity is hereby barred from all Galactic Olympic events, effective immediately." The stadium erupted, not in protest. In laughter, Krillix slammed a clawed fist against his thorax. A Vorak gesture of triumph. "Told you, Softkin, your species couldn't even qualify for the preliminaries." Blake didn't move. Head expected this. Hell, Earth Command had warned him. "They'll say no," the briefing officer had said. "They always do." Zephyra, the luminary swimmer, drifted closer, her bioluminescence dimming to a mocking flicker. "Don't take it personally," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "It's not your fault your ancestors never evolved beyond whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at Blake's unarmored skin. Blake exhaled slowly. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. The crowd quieted. He pulled out a data chip, small, unassuming. The kind every species in the Federation used. "This," Blake said, slotting the chip into the podium's interface before Vexlor could protest, "is footage from Earth's last global conflict, the one before we unified." The holograms shifted, grainy, decades. Old footage flickered to life. Human soldiers sprinting through irradiated wastelands, tanks rolling over terrain that would liquefy a Zephyrian's exoskeleton, fighter pilots pulling maneuvers that defied every known law of inertial tolerance. The laughter died. Blake let the footage play, just long enough for the message to sink in. Then he removed the chip. "You banned us because we're inferior." He met Vexler's compound eyes. "No. You banned us because you're terrified of what happens when we stop playing by your rules." Silence. Then Krillix snorted. "Empty words. Your little toys mean nothing. You couldn't last 10 seconds in a real competition." Blake smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Funny you should say that." He tapped his wristcom. A transmission alert chimed across every delegate's personal device simultaneously. "Because we just invented a new game." The holograms shifted again. This time, they showed something far more modern. The UESN Defiance carving through an asteroid field at speeds that would rupture a Vorak's organs. Railgun fire punching through a derelict battleship like paper. Admiral Morrison's voice boomed through the stadium speakers. Attention, Galactic Olympic Committee, humanity declines your ban. Instead, we extend an invitation to the first annual Terran Games. The footage cut to a simulated course, zero-G dogfights, orbital artillery duels, warships threading through black hole gravity wells. Events designed for species who don't need rules to keep them safe, Morrison continued. First match starts in 72 hours. Bring your best if you dare. The transmission ended. The stadium was so quiet Blake could hear the distant hum of Zenthis Prime's orbital traffic. Then Krillix lunged. The Vorak champion moved faster than anything that size should, a blur of chitin and rage. Blake didn't flinch. He'd seen the security feeds. He knew what was coming. A shimmering force field snapped into existence inches from Blake's face. Krillix slammed into it with a sound like a starship hitting atmosphere. "Ah," Blake said, watching the Vorak crumple. "Rule number 1, humans always cheat." He turned and walked out. Behind him, the stadium erupted, not in laughter this time, but in outrage, confusion, and something far more dangerous, interest. The athletes' lounge hummed with alien chatter, a symphony of clicks, hums, and telepathic pulses that made Lieutenant Lisa Hayes' teeth ache. She leaned against a floating crystalline bench, its surface adjusting to her human weight with a barely perceptible groan. Around her, champions from 30 species lounged in their specialized environments. Vorak warriors submerged in nutrient gel, luminary swimmers suspended in zero-G bubbles, ceruleans floating in meditation clusters. A shadow fell across her. Krillix the Unbroken loomed over her, his 8-foot exoskeleton gleaming under the lounge's ambient light. His 4 arms flexed, each ending in razor-sharp talons. "Sofkin," he rumbled, mandibles clicking in amusement. "I heard your kind were banned before the first event. A pity. I was looking forward to crushing one of you in the gravity trials." Hayes sipped her water, actual Earth water, imported at ridiculous expense, and smirked. "Funny. I heard Vorak bones shatter at Fegi's." Krillix's bioluminescent stripes flared red, a sign of irritation among his kind. Behind him, Zephyra the luminary swimmer drifted closer, her translucent skin pulsing with amused patterns. "The human thinks she understands gravity," Zephyra chimed, her voice like wind chimes. "Your muscles tear under basic acceleration. Your Olympic records are cute." Hayes set her water down. "You're right, we're not built for your games." She rolled her shoulders, feeling the old ache of G-force training. "But you ever wonder why we keep trying?" Krillix leaned down, his faceted eyes reflecting her face a dozen times over. "Stubbornness, a primitive trait." "Nah," Hayes grinned. "We just like proving people wrong." A hush rippled through the lounge. Athletes from a dozen species turned, sensing confrontation. Hayes knew the rules. No physical altercations, no interspecies incidents. But no one said anything about words. Zephyra's glow shifted to a mocking violet. "Prove it." Then, the Vorak hold the sprint record. The Luminari own swimming. The Ceruleans dominate telekinetic relays. What do humans have? Hayes tapped her temple. "Adaptability." Krillix laughed. "A sound like grinding rocks. Adapt to this." He snatched a Durasteel training bar from a nearby rack, a weight no human could lift without powered armor. With a casual flex, he bent it into a perfect circle and tossed it at her feet. The bar clanged against the floor, rolling to a stop at her boots. The lounge erupted in alien cheers. Hayes stared at the bar, then at Krillix. "Neat trick." She crouched, wrapping her fingers around the metal. "But you know what humans do better than anyone." Krillix crossed his upper arms. "Die, improvise." With a grunt, Hayes yanked a small device from her pocket, a standard issue plasma welder from the engineering corps. She flicked it on, the blue flame hissing to life. Before anyone could react, she welded the bent bar into a makeshift grappling hook, then slapped a maglock from her boot onto the end. The aliens fell silent. Hayes tossed the hook toward the ceiling, where it clamped onto a floating light fixture. She yanked hard, testing the line. See, your games are about specialization, one trick, perfected, but humans. She kicked off, swinging in a wide arc over the lounge. Alien athletes ducked as she soared past, her boots barely missing a Vorax crest. She landed neatly beside Krillix, close enough to see his faceted eyes widen. We don't play by your rules. Zephara's glow flickered uncertainly. That's not a recognized Olympic skill. Hayes unhooked the line, pocketing the welder. It is now. Krillix's stripes pulsed dark red. You think tricks win medals? No. Hayes met his gaze. But they win wars. A new voice cut through the tension. Lieutenant. Hayes gave Krillix a mock salute. Duty calls. Try not to break anything without me. As she walked away, the whispers followed. Did you see that? A Cerelian murmured. Improvisation isn't a competitive category, a Luminari argued. Krillix watched her go, his talons flexing. It should be. Outside, Blake exhaled sharply. You're stirring the pot, Hayes. She grinned. Just warming them up, sir. Blake shook his head, but there was pride in his eyes. Admiral Morrison's calling. We're starting our own games. Hayes cracked her knuckles. About damn time. Behind them, the lounge erupted in fresh debate. About rules, about humans, about what it meant to truly compete. Hayes didn't look back. Let them talk. The real show was just beginning. The human embassy on Zenthis Prime stood like a knife among the organic curves of alien architecture. Its sharp angles and matte, black alloy reflected none of the system's twin suns, a deliberate choice. Inside, Captain Ryan Blake paced before a holographic display of Earth's ancient Olympic rings, now cracked and flickering. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes tossed a stress ball against the far wall, catching it with mechanical precision. They called us inferior, she muttered, like we're some backwater primates who just discovered fire. Blake stopped pacing. They don't understand competition, not really. The hologram shifted to footage of the Vorak champion Krillix tearing through a Durasteel barrier during the weightlifting trials. Their games are about dominance, ours. He smirked. Ours are about winning. The doors hissed open. Admiral Jake Morrison strode in, his uniform crisp, despite the 3 hours head spent arguing with the Federation Council. The room snapped to attention. At ease, he said, tossing a data pad onto the table. It projected the Galactic Olympic Charter, Article Fae highlighted in angry red. No species may compete without unanimous approval of the committee, Hayes snorted. So much for unity through sport. Morrison tapped the pad. The image changed to a star map. They want to bench us, fine. His finger stabbed a point near Zenthis Moon. Well, play our own game. Blake leaned in. Sir, the Federation will never allow. Morrison's grin was all teeth. They don't get a vote. He flicked the display again. Schematics for the UESN Defiance materialized, its railguns gleaming in the holographic light. We're issuing an open challenge. The Terran Games. Hayes' stress ball froze mid-throw. Events, 0, dogfights, orbital artillery duels, warship obstacle courses. Morrison's eyes burned. Real tests, no weight classes, no safety protocols, just the best pilots, gunners, and tacticians in the galaxy. A murmur rippled through the assembled human athletes, engineers, marines, pilots, all hand-picked for the Olympics. A hulking man with scars across his knuckles cracked his neck. And if the aliens cry foul? Morrison didn't blink. Then they shouldn't have banned us. The room erupted. Hayes was already sketching fighter modifications on a napkin. Blake pulled up the comms array. Who gets the invitation? Everyone. Morrison activated the embassy's broadcast system. The hologram zoomed out, showing the entire Zenthis system. Let's see who's brave enough to play. The transmission blasted across every frequency, every embassy, every sports arena in the capital. Morrison's face filled 1,000 screens, his voice cutting through the chatter of alien dialects. Attention, Galactic Federation. You declared humanity unfit for competition. Today, we disagree. Behind him, footage rolled, human pilots outmaneuvering Zephyrian interceptors. Marine teams surviving Vorak hunting grounds, the Defiance splitting an asteroid with a single railgun shot. The Terran Games begin in Fey hours. Events will include live, fire drills, fleet maneuvers, and combat endurance trials. All species welcome. His smile turned lethal. Assuming you can keep up. The Vorak delegation was the first to respond. Krilik's snarling face replaced Morrison's on the feeds, his mandibles quivering. You dare challenge us in real competition. Your fragile bones will litter the arena. Hayes grinned at the screen. Oh, he's pissed. The Luminari were next, their bioluminescent patterns flashing intrigue. The risk is unconventional, but the spectacle may prove enlightening. By midnight, 12 species had accepted. The Zephyrians waited until the last moment. High Arbiter Vexlor's communique fey-dripping with condescension. This farce will be terminated the moment human incompetence endangers civilized beings. Morrison played the message for the team. They think we'll choke. He turned to Hayes. Lieutenant, you're up first. 0G dogfight against Krilik's. She paled just for a second. Rules. There are no rules. Morrison handed her a flight manual. Just win. Blake watched the alien responses pile up. The Cerelians were telepathically analyzing human tactics. The Octavians were calculating odds. The Vorak were already placing bets against humanity. Hayes tucked the manual under her arm. They still don't get it, do they? Blake shook his head. Get what? We didn't invent sports to prove we're strong. She headed for the hangar, tossing the stress ball one last time. We invented them to prove we're clever. Outside, the first human fighters roared to life, their engines screaming through Zenthis atmosphere. The games had begun. The asteroid field stretched endlessly before Lieutenant Lisa Hayes, a chaotic graveyard of spinning rock and frozen debris. Her fingers danced across the Valkyrie's controls, the human fighter's engines humming with restrained power. Across the comms, Krilik's voice crackled with amusement. Softkin, you realize this is a race? Yes, not a funeral procession. Hayes smirked, watching the Vorak champion's sleek, organic fighter dart ahead, its bioluminescent thrusters leaving a shimmering trail. The alien ship was faster, no question, but speed wasn't the only thing that won battles. Human rule, Faye, Hayes muttered, adjusting her grip on the throttle. Never let them see the trap coming. The course was simple. Navigate the asteroid belt, hit the checkpoint, and return. No weapons, no shields, just raw piloting skill. The Galactic Committee had insisted on fair conditions. They hadn't specified how you won. Krilik's ship banked hard around a jagged cluster of rock, his natural exo-armor, making him immune to the brutal G-forces that would crush most species. Hayes gritted her teeth as her own inertial dampeners whined in protest. She could hear the Valkyrie's frame groaning under the strain. You humans, always so slow, Krilik taunted, his mandibles clicking over the comms. Your bones break under pressure. Your blood boils in vacuum, and yet you dare call yourselves athletes. Hayes didn't answer. She was too busy calculating. The checkpoint loomed ahead, a floating beacon pulsing in the void. Krilik reached it first, his ship spinning in a mocking victory roll before arcing back toward the starting line. Pathetic, he sneered. I expected more from a species that claims to. Hayes cut him off by slamming her throttle to full. The Valkyrie roared forward, her engines burning blue, white as she ignored the checkpoint entirely. Krilik's laughter died as he realized her trajectory. What are you? Hayes was coming straight at him. The Vorak champion's reflexes were inhumanly fast. His ship twisted, banking hard to avoid the collision, but Hayes had already accounted for that. At the last possible second, she yanked her control stick sideways, sending the Valkyrie into a brutal spin. Her wing clipped Krilik's starboard thruster, sending his ship spiraling into a tumbling asteroid. Alarms blared in Hayes' cockpit as her own fighter careened out of control. Ejecting, she announced calmly. The escape pod blasted free just as the Valkyrie slammed into a spinning rock, erupting in a fireball of molten metal. Silence filled the comms. Then, from the drifting escape pod, Hayes's voice crackled over the open channel. Human rule Faye, no such thing as a fair fight. The stadium erupted. Not in cheers, in outrage. High Arbiter Vexlor's voice boomed across the orbital feed. This is not sportsmanship. This is savagery. Hayes grinned as her pod drifted toward the recovery team. No, she corrected. This is winning. Krillix's ship finally stabilized, his comms hissing with static. When he spoke, his voice was no longer mocking. It was shaken. You planned that. Hayes leaned back in her seat, watching the debris field through the pod's small viewport. Human rule, Faye, she said. Always play to your strengths. And humanity's greatest strength, refusing to lose. The holographic projection of Admiral Jake Morrison flickered to life in the center of the Federation Council chambers, his image towering over the assembled alien dignitaries. The circular room hummed with energy, its walls lined with glowing sigils representing 100 species. High Arbiter Vexler's chitinous plates rattled with barely contained fury as he rose from his elevated podium. This is an outrage. Vexler's voice echoed through the chamber, his mandibles quivering. Your so-called Terran games violate every principle of fair competition. You rammed a Vorak fighter. You weaponized the asteroid belt. Morrison crossed his arms, his grin sharp enough to cut durasteel. Fair competition. You banned us for being inferior. Now you're mad because we're winning. A murmur rippled through the council. The Luminari delegates' bioluminescent patterns flashed crimson with agitation. You humans cheat, she hissed. Your pilot ejected before impact. That is not victory. It is cowardice. Cowardice. Morrison barked a laugh. Lieutenant Hayes calculated the ejection to the millisecond. She knew exactly how much hull she could scrape off Krillix's ship before punching out. That's not cheating. That's engineering. The Vorak ambassador, a hulking exo-warrior clad in ceremonial battle armor, slammed a clawed fist onto the council table. The impact cracked the reinforced crystal surface. Your games are a mockery of tradition. The zero-G dogfight was meant to test piloting skill, not collisions. Funny, Morrison said, tilting his head. Last I checked, war doesn't come with rules. You wanted to see what humans are made of. Well, now you know. Vexlor's antennae twitched. Enough. The Federation demands you cease these barbaric displays immediately. The Terran Games are not sanctioned, and any further events will be met with sanctions. Morrison's grin didn't waver. Sanctions, you already banned us from your games. These are our rules now. He leaned forward, the hologram flickering with static. And let's be honest, you're not stopping us because we're barbaric. You're stopping us because you're scared. The chamber erupted, the Cerelian delegates' floating orbs pulsed with indignant energy. Scared of you. Your species barely has interstellar travel. And yet, Morrison said, we just outmaneuvered the greatest pilots in the Federation with one fighter. Imagine what happens when we bring the rest. Silence fell. Vexler's exoskeleton darkened, a sign of deep distress among his kind. You are playing with forces you do not understand. Admiral, the Federation has existed for millennia. Your games threaten the stability of... Stability. Morrison cut him off. You mean control. You've spent so long dictating what strength looks like that you forgot what real competition is. Well, newsflash, humanity doesn't follow your script. The Zephyrian Dreadnought's captain, a towering figure with iridescent plating, stepped forward. Then you leave us no choice. The Eternity's Edge will intercept your flagship before the next event. Consider this your final warning. Morrison's eyes gleamed. Looking forward to it. Our next events. A warship obstacle course. Plenty of room for creative interpretations of the rules. The hologram winked out, leaving the council in stunned silence. On the bridge of the UESN Defiance, Morrison turned to his crew. Lieutenant Hayes, still in her flight suit, smirked. So, they're sending a dreadnought to stop us. Yep, Morrison said, cracking his knuckles. Time to show them why humans don't do warnings, the crew cheered. Somewhere in the depths of the ship, the Defiance's railguns hummed to life. The Zephyrian dreadnought Eternity's Edge filled the view screen of the USN Defiance, its organic, looking hull pulsing with violet energy. Admiral Morrison gripped the armrests of his command chair as the alien ship's main cannon glowed brighter. "Helm, evasive pattern, Delta 7, he ordered. "And someone tell engineering I need those railguns charged yesterday." Lieutenant Hayes's voice crackled over the comm from her fighter squadron. "Sir, they're boxing us in near the plasma minefield. Classic Zephyrian pincer maneuver." Morrison smirked. Classic means predictable. On the tactical display, 3 more alien warships moved to flank them. The obstacle course's final challenge wasn't just surviving the gauntlet. It was reaching the finish line first while under fire. "Navigation. Recalculate our approach vector. I want us skimming that black hole's event horizon." A stunned silence filled the bridge. Ensign Cho turned pale. "Sir, no ship has ever. That is why they won't expect it," Morrison interrupted. "Hayes, take your squad and make some noise near those wreckage clusters. Make it look like we're running scared." Out in the debris field, Hayes grinned inside her cockpit. "You heard the man, boys and girls. Let's give our scaly friends a show." Her fighter banked hard as she led the squadron in a chaotic dance through the floating ruins, their thrusters flaring bright against the cosmic darkness. Aboard the Eternity's Edge, High Arbiter Vexilor watched the human ship scatter with satisfaction. His secondary mandibles vibrated with amusement. Just as predicted, they break under pressure. He turned to his tactical officer. "Concentrate fire on their flagship. Let us end this farce." The Defiance shuddered as a plasma bolt grazed its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Shields at Fay%, reported Chief Engineer Kowalski through gritted teeth. "One more hit like that and won't matter if this works," Morrison muttered. The black hole loomed ahead, its gravitational pull already distorting their sensors. "All hands brace for slingshot maneuver engineering. Divert all non-essential power to structural integrity." The ship groaned as tidal forces twisted its frame. Alarms wailed. Ensign Cho gripped her console as the view screen showed space itself bending around them. "Approaching critical stress levels," she shouted. Morrison's knuckles whitened. "Hold course." On the Eternity's Edge, Vexilor's amusement turned to horror as his sensors showed the human ship's impossible trajectory. "They're insane. No species would risk." His words cut off as the Defiance emerged from the black hole's grip at impossible speed, its railguns already charging. Hayes whooped over the comms. "That is my admiral. Now eat vacuum lizards." A squadron broke formation, peppering the confused alien ships with precision fire. The Defiance's railguns fired in sequence, each tungsten round striking weakened points on the Eternity's Edge's hull. Vexilor staggered as his ship lurched violently. "Damage report. Primary engines disabled," cried his tactical officer. They're passing the finish beacon." Morrison allowed himself a small smile as the Defiance crossed the marker. The remaining alien ships hung motionless, their commanders too stunned to react. Over the open channel, his voice carried across the battlefield. "Human rule number 2, when the odds are impossible, change the game." Hayes added her own commentary as her fighter performed a victory roll. "And rule number 3, never bet against the house." The bridge crew cheered as the tactical display confirmed their victory. Kowalski wiped sweat from his brow. "Remind me never to play poker with you, sir." Morrison leaned back, watching the confused alien ships through the view screen. "This wasn't a bluff, Chief, just humanity playing to its strengths." He tapped the comm. "All ships, form up. Let's go collect our prize." As the Defiance turned toward Zenthis Prime, its scarred hull gleaming in the distant starlight, the Zephyrian fleet made no move to intercept. For the first time in galactic history, an entire armada had been outmaneuvered, not by superior technology, but by sheer, reckless ingenuity. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just compete, they rewrote the rules. The victory parade stretched for miles through New York's skyline, a riot of color and noise beneath the towering spires of human architecture. Alien banners captured from the Zephyrian dreadnoughts, torn from Vorak strongholds, and even a shimmering luminary standard hung defiantly between the buildings. The crowd roared as Admiral Morrison's armored transport rolled down the avenue, flanked by human athletes in their combat gear. Lieutenant Hayes stood atop the vehicle, her arms raised, the gold medal from the Zero-G dogfight glinting around her neck. "Never thought I'd see the day," Blake muttered beside Morrison, watching a group of Cerellian defectors float above the crowd, their orbs pulsing with admiration. Morrison chuckled. "They banned us from their games, so we made better ones." A holographic display flickered to life above the parade route, showing highlights from the Terran games. Hayes' last-second ejection, the Defiance's black hole slingshot. The moment Krillix had stared in stunned silence as his own warships' shields failed under human artillery. The crowd erupted again. Then the feed cut to live footage from Zenthis Prime. High Arbiter Vexlor stood before the Federation Council, his chitinous plates vibrating with barely contained fury. "This is an outrage." His voice crackled through the speakers. "The so-called Terran games violate every principle of fair competition," Hayes snorted. "Fair, they banned us for being inferior." On screen, Morrison's pre-recorded response played. "You wanted specialization." His grin was sharp. Humans specialize in winning. The hologram shifted to show the Defiance's railguns firing in perfect sync, obliterating an asteroid field obstacle in seconds. A new voice cut through the noise, Krillix of all beings. The massive Vorak champion pushed through the crowd, his exoskeleton still scorched from the dogfight. The humans tensed, but Krillix didn't raise his claws. Instead, he dipped his head in a gesture no Vorak had ever given a human. "I wish to compete again," he rumbled. "Under your rules." Silence fell. Then laughter. Hayes jumped down from the transport and clapped Krillix on the shoulder, or where a shoulder would be on a human. "Took you long enough." Morrison activated his comm. "Patch me through system. Wide." A hush spread as his voice echoed across Earth, Zenthis and every Federation outpost in between. "The Terran games aren't over. They're just beginning." The holograms shifted again, displaying a massive orbital complex under construction near Mars. "Welcome to the first permanent arena, open to any species brave enough to step into the ring." Zephyra, the luminary swimmer, materialized at the edge of the crowd, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with something no one had ever seen before. "Respect. You realize this changes everything," she said quietly to Hayes. Hayes grinned. "That's the point." Blake watched as more alien athletes stepped forward, Cerellians, Zephyrians, even a group of timid Flatterians from the outer rim. All eyes were on the humans, not with pity, not with mockery, with something new. Admiral Morrison raised a fist. The crowd roared back. Somewhere in the chaos, Krillix bellowed a challenge, and Hayes laughed as she accepted. The games weren't just games anymore. They were a declaration. Humanity had been banned, so they built their own stage. And now the galaxy would have no choice but to watch.